Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Royal Grown Radio, here still and again at the Grow Off 2023 Clone Drop at the Satori Wellness Center in McKinleyville, California. I am joined today by McKinleyville local Daniel from Hendrix Nursery, and we're here to talk about the genetics behind the skunk off.
Skunk off.
Skunk
Grow
off.
off / skunk off.
2023.
Dude, this one is a cool one. This is like way more, it's actually, because all the other grow offs we don't tell what the strain is.
Right.
So
It's a
that's always
mystery.
like a big, hush hush. We have to confuse our nursery staff so they don't know what's going out, so we don't leak it. But this one was actually really fun that we got to say, this is the skunk off and we're doing a skunk hunt. So yeah, the skunk came from Marty Yip. Did you guys talk to Marty yet?
We haven't talked to Marty yet. We're hoping to get him in here. He'll wander in the door hopefully any moment, and we'll.
Dude, Marty
drag
is
him
a
in.
wealth of knowledge, and
Truth.
you know Marty.
Yes.
Marty, this is his moment to shine. I've never heard Marty sound so on as when he talks about the skunk, because it's he did all the research. And honestly, the way Marty talks, I was just like, is all this research, all the stuff he's saying true? But then when going out and doing that due diligence and going and checking with Skunk Man Sam and researching everything that was online, it was even the goddamn receipts that he had his seeds all validated this story that kind of seemed implausible.
Okay.
So it's he's got these 96 skunk seeds that have been kind of kept separate from the whole rest of the lineage of the skunk for whatever, years, decades
even.
Yeah. So Marty came up on the seeds and grew a couple phenotypes, and the skunk community is deep, heavy. Everybody's got an opinion.
Oh, big time.
Dude, we got on Instagram Live yesterday, and this guy was telling us, "Oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, blah blah blah," and it's just there's at least 40% of every skunk story where somebody's going to be like, "My story of the skunk is different."
Well, and rightfully so. It's 30, 40 years
Fucking
deep
everywhere.
now.
Yeah.
Right? It's been a long time, and everywhere people had their local skunk variety. And so tracking the true skunk, I think, is a little difficult,
It's impossible nearly.
Yeah, I was growing what we called the skunk one in Kalamazoo, Michigan in 1994 through 1997 and 98. And that's about the last I saw of the true skunk that, in my perception, right? So,
And so
I saw my limited slice of the world like everyone else.
So to you, was skunk skunky?
It was deeply, purely, truly skunky.
Skunky.
Like no other strain I've smelled in the 30 years since.
Right. And so it's seems like the problem with skunk in its nature is skunk is synonymous with good ganja, just the word skunk is, and then the people that were there at the very beginning of skunk, they want to smell that skunk smell.
Truth, and they should.
And the skunk man, this is where the skunk man made it tough. He didn't like the skunk smell. From his opinion, what he told us is he bred away from the skunk to make it sweeter because, people in the 70s and early 80s were getting in trouble. And the skunk smell was easily associated with ganja, really strong. Yeah. So he was breeding away from it from that reason. And then also he didn't like the high that the true skunk was giving.
Which is couch lock.
Couch lock, knocks you the fuck out, totally.
Right.
He's a daytime smoker. He's actually a hashish smoker,
okay.
Is what we learned. And that his whole skunk 3, or his whole sweet skunk lineage is bred in that direction. So it's like pretty tough to like try to nail it down. Here's Marty right here.
Yay, welcome. Come on
Mr.
in, Marty.
Marty.
We're gonna get Marty mic'd up here and just kind of ramble poetic a little bit while he gets mic'd up.
And so, yeah, that's what was blowing my mind is like the way Marty did the research and knew that the breeders were breeding skunk towards the sweet smell.
Well, and that's what was happening in Amsterdam and overseas. And just to catch up, Marty, we were just kind of talking about kind of the history and legacy of the perception of what the skunk was, right? And how there were, skunk circles all over that people had this skunk weed, and it was a more ubiquitous term like, oh, it's skunk, or it's dank, or it's, kind bud. It was used in that way in a lot of places for a long time. So how do we kind of arrive back and narrow down to the true original actual skunky skunk? And let's give Marty a half a second sound check once Emmanuel plugs him in here.
Yeah, Marty actually knows.
This is perfect. Great timing.
Marty actually knows knew what to expect from all that, which is like, for me, I'm getting educated about the skunk from this drop almost. It's like Marty's work as a preservationist, Skunk Man Sam's work as a breeder, the 2 decades where Skunk Man Sam bred it away from the skunk smell towards the sweet smell at Horta BV in Amsterdam, and shifted what skunk is. And so it's like they're making millions of skunk seeds and have made millions of skunk seeds.
But it's all that sweeter profile.
Or that's like the part where it's like I don't think I'm qualified to know what I know what Horta Farm did.
Yeah. What it's I think it's all whose intention, right? Because so that was the point of these seeds. Back to the perception. So it's part of it is okay. So when Sam Skunk Man took these seeds over to Amsterdam, right? Obviously there was a lot of work and throughout the various seed banks that used it, and each one of them, if they're passed around the clone, they were using the same exact skunk that one person selected. So so you gotta whoever was the first person that David let select that, or that through his process said, hey, no, this is the one that we kept working on.
They coined that pheno.
Yeah, and within that lineage, though, there's so many more possibilities as long as you had that original stock, because that skunky skunk, like just pure skunk, like no, not even like any other flavors, just kind of just hashy. Yeah. It that's probably in there because of the lineage, But then there's also the other hints of the other aspects of it. So it's like it's more the lineage, the heritage of the seed stock, in my opinion, is what people should be chasing. And then because it was an old cut, it's like you could spend your whole time trying to search it down, but you'd have to have something to reference off of to make sure that it's what it was.
That's the hard part, is how do you reference properly?
Like I'm 40, we're old, right? I'm 47, so it was around Sacramento, Davis area. It was around a lot, and so whatever the skunk that was of old, and some of the skunks I've had tasted similar to that old Salmon Creek Big Bud, kind of like really earthy, skunky, because Salmon Creek Big Bud, remember, is a skunk, Northern Lights, and Afghan. But the way Chris picked it, selected for it, was more on the skunk side.
Right, it had the Northern Lights long-running cola size in stock, which is why it got crushed so hard up here, because it just put out. But it had that skunkier aroma, but a little more NLE high almost to it as well.
And the Afghani yield, it had that
yield, dude. I mean, what happened to the genetics that used to yield? Right?
And so these are so having these old strains, Northern Lights, all the way to the original haze and back to the skunk, you're able to recreate some of the strains. Back to what you said, where did all these go? You look at a lot of these modern strains, right? And a lot of these modern strains will have something of the old in it.
Like a Shiva Shanti or a Shiva Skunk, which were all the Skunk 195 crosses, and
right, a little piece of Durban Poison or something.
Exactly. So if you take these classic varieties that were known in all the coffee shops in Amsterdam in the 80s, 90s, whatnot, before the White Widows and
bubblegum. It was like 94,
I was going to say,
95,
you're
96.
known for bubblegum.
Well, but a lot of those were derived.
And bubblegum's a classic, right?
But a lot of those were derived from like NL and Haze, like an NL Haze cross.
What about cat piss? Do you know what cat piss was derived from?
I'm pretty sure that's an NL.
I'm pretty sure it's a skunk too.
NL.
Yeah, I'm trying to I need to do this whole skunk thing makes me want to just do the research on so many of these strains that are just lost, or try to understand them, because it's like we're re-pheno hunting all of it, right? Train wreck, right? It's like,
right, which,
we know what it is, but definably, like,
well, I
what
think
are the traits?
this is something new that's coming out of the prankster camp and out of the old school GD camp, is that there's hints that was Mountain Girl's Nepalese haze, and it's still pure in its form in Nepalese haze in that Oregon faction of old school pranksters.
Trainwreck?
The original pre-California Trainwreck genetic is still out there, and so we're trying. That's another circle that we're trying to track that one and bring that Nepalese haze back.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like the origin stories have like, you almost had to dismiss them for like the last like 5 to 7 years, because it was just like you couldn't trust your source, you didn't know where the clones are coming from. But on a way deeper level, the people that are the gatekeepers of those genetics are actually still alive, and they're still kind of just like, you know, hiding because they came into this thing in a different era. Most of them couldn't go legal because of probably all the felonies, and
or they bounced out to Spain or to Switzerland,
right, to go find sovereignty where there's like some kind of like political freedom against it, because we know it wasn't here. You know, it's like 70s and 80s ran anybody as far as they possibly could from like Reagan era.
Well, and the memories are fuzzy. Also, you start trying to look back 40 years with a bunch of stoners, and you're going to get some kind of twists and curves to the story.
Yeah, and so when you're trying to track down these genetics, when you have the opportunity and you come across, like, for instance, Mel Frank, who was past these seeds, these 96 seeds too, you looked at and you go, some people are like, skunk, whatever, those are so played out. Why would you want to hunt down skunk? And I've seen those comments about like, why would you want to hunt down skunk? Well, it's not about hunting down the skunk. It's because this is one step away, legit known in the circles, the keeper of it, you know?
Right.
He was gifted those. Mel Frank was gifted those seeds.
And and the way I remembered the story that, you know, was somewhat confirmed was that he got those seeds. He got his first seed stock in '82 at the first High Times Cup win.
And then he reproduced those.
So then he
in
stored those for 8 years or whatever. 14. I can't remember how long he stored them for.
Until '96.
So he stored them for 14 years or whatever. Or 88. It was 88 to '96. He stored them for 8 years. So '88 was the first High Times Cup. The first win was Skunk 1.
Rightfully so.
Cops the seeds then, stores them for 8 years, reproduces them.
96, and then once again in 2010, and that was the last time he had ever done anything with skunk, because everyone was wanting Kush, everyone was wanting, you know, sour diesel, no one was wanting skunk.
Right, you're going so against the grain. You're like, I want skunk. I'm breeding skunk seeds, and this market can be so trendy and flash in the pan, hot. Like, people miss these like crazy opportunities because they're, that's not hot.
And then back to the whole, like, man, there's so many people selling feminized autoflower, skunk, all the way to you can go to the catalogs and from Sensi Seeds all the way to whoever, and they have their skunk. But you're like, wait a second, no. They got theirs from the same seed stock. So why do I want to chase this down just to have these skunk genetics for my breeding? Since I have the opportunity, why don't I just jump on this right now?
Yeah, but that's interesting. You look back to this legacy, and that's what created the sour diesels, was that '88 Super Skunk crossed into the chem, right? And it's because somebody had the presence of mind to preserve that '88 Super.
Well, the Super Skunk. Well, the Super Skunk is skunk. The genetics of Super Skunk is an Afghan skunk. Right.
It's that pure skunk that they were popping in the late '80s. Into those original Afghan genetics, and it stabilized, it got bigger, and it chunked harder, right?
And then so when he's talking about, you know, recapping on about how like, what happened to all these, you know, whatnot strains, so that was part of the reason why I chased a lot of these genetics like the skunk or NL, was because I wanted to recreate a lot of these classic strains under my own wing, and because I have a high performance liquid chromatography light lab. I'm able to analyze all my males and females to know what's what. Even though they look good, sometimes they're just not the they're not the most ideal. You know, it's like you track them through their growth and watch what they're doing, feed them what they need to feed, take away a food and take away an element and add an element. And some of them might need more magnesium from seed.
Yeah.
Some might need more magnesium. Some might need more light. Some of them just don't
Less
need food.
light.
Yeah. So those are the things you observe, and then and then by testing his cannabinoids throughout its stages, you get to see all these things, right? Wow. And so the story of that one is like a good example of that one was DJ Short's Blueberry.
Okay.
He had a run where the blueberry male all of a sudden turned his crop backwards.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so the old blueberry we had back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, that sweet, acrid, like lingering floral, borderline blue dream, but more acrid.
Yeah, like almost putrid in a way.
Yeah. Blueberry muffin's the closest thing so far, you know, that I've had of that, but maybe less acrid still. It's like
it's on the sweeter side.
Still on the sweeter side.
Yeah.
There has to be more of that,
like cat pissy smell.
Yep.
Have you guys tried do you guys know Rare Breed at all? Brad with Rare Breed?
I don't know him. I know of his reputation. And
He's got like
fantastically
a blueberry chem 91 strain that's super stable, and people love him, dude. Like the loyalty for Rare Breed genetics, and like specifically how he selects clones from his own genetic line is like legendary. You guys should hunt that like blue. He's got a Chem 91 blueberry that like get a chance to smoke it, because I think that like you'll see just like some stuff that you haven't seen in a while.
And so that's why acquiring old school genetics, whether it be landrace Afghans, or someone goes, oh, here's the Thai, the purple Thai seeds from that, you know, let's say DJ Short used. Like, sweet, let me use this Afghan, try to make my version, and see what I come up with, right? And so that's where I think it's at.
It hurts to think back and look at all of those clones in my memory, and just be able to be like, they're right there. Like, you can still touch them. You can still touch that, you know, Salmon Creek Big Bud.
And the flavor of that true skunk one, like I can still taste it. I haven't tasted anything like the original skunk one we experienced in Michigan, which was likely coming out of the same stock from the 80s that we were playing with in the late 90s.
Which one did you come across? The one that was more like cotton candy-ish?
No. It was like, it just got pulled out of a skunk's ass.
Yeah.
Like deep, rotten skunk. And not like gassy, not like, you know, Gorilla Gluey.
Yeah.
None of, like, it
Not
was
what it is
skunk.
today. Yeah.
And I have not seen, and I play with a lot of genetics, I have not seen a truly skunky strain in almost 20 years.
Yeah, it needs to be unlocked again, you know? A lot of it's in the old classic genetics, we just need to unlock them again, you know? And that's like, that's what these guys did back in the day, was took this seed stock, you know, whatever seed stock they created, and just worked it, because there wasn't a plethora of strains.
And there was 10 years in between. I mean, it's hard to really say, but it seems like there was about 10 years in between the original breeding of skunk and the 88 High Times win. So it's like, in those 10 years, you know, skunk was being bred here in Santa Cruz, where it originally was bred, before he took it over to the UK, or took it over to Amsterdam and took it over to Holland, and changed the total trajectory of the line. And that's like maybe when the community got a more widespread access, global community, was when it got to Amsterdam. But the California growers and the California breeding line, it seems like that circulated up into BC and across Canada, almost from that original like trade route, Silk Road style. So that lineage seems like that was more acrid and more skunky. So it's like almost like the stuff that like got produced in the legal sense in Amsterdam was less skunky, and the stuff that was like
diluted.
That's why I was asking, because
bred away from that on purpose. And so it's like the skunkier skunk, the reason the community is like, I want that skunky skunk that they know, it's because their neighborhood person, or their like, you know, illicit bigwig in their like region was the one keeping that skunk smell going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was, for us in Kalamazoo, there were just a few people that were, I mean, I was 15, 16, 17 at the time, and there were these like 30, 40, 50-year-old people that had been growing all these years and were passing out the cuts now that, cloning became a little more ubiquitous and it was less seed breeding and making sure to preserve the genetics in that way. But like, kind of to get back what you were saying, I really agree that like tracking down as close as we can get to those old school strains and then breeding to re-express those traits, kind of inbreeding, re-pheno-selecting to get back to those original traits gives us an opportunity to have base stock to create genetics that all of our modern genetics are based on. And that's where I feel the real advantage to getting these genetics starts to come into play. Yeah, sure, it's great for you and I to smoke a J of the old school skunk that smells like skunk and reminisce and be like, yes, this is the best. I remember when I was 16 and couch locked and this. That's awesome. But the depth comes from the ability to take those genetics again and move the genetic needle forward in a way that it's not moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the work that you're doing with that, it's like, first you have to be from an era where you have access to the people that even know what that is, right? Because to define Salmon Creek Big Bud that's urban legend nearly, right?
Yeah.
There's no definition that's going to lead you down that path other than peers that you know and yourself and your own memory to help you be like, now we're getting closer.
Yeah, and it helped too that I lived out there in the late 90s and with Chris, and he, through nighttime conversations or we're out there barbecuing, you start asking him, well, what caused you to select what, and having that from the horse's mouth information back then was so valuable, and he said that that's what he selected for. So if we wanted to do any breeding projects and that was one of the things he wanted to do was take a couple strains, whether it was pure Afghan seeds or skunk seeds, because he had some that he still brought back that he saved from his Amsterdam trip, same packets that he had with the Big Bud seeds he had, because they all went there, and I had met him because he went to UC Davis, where I'm from, and so he knew me through circles and all that stuff. So
yeah. But
anyways, they had like skunk Kush seeds. They had all kind, and that's what helped me start some of my genetics. Was when he was disappeared, I acquired a lot of his seed stock. So I was able to use.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, so some of my old seed stock is part of his old seed stock that I started out, and I wasn't serious yet. I was just doing it more to re-preserve seeds, to make more seeds of the ones I liked and whatnot. But one of his things was he wanted to take the, which I didn't get, was the skunk one and the Afghans, because I don't know what happened to those seeds. He must have put them off the side because he wanted to work with them. But that was one thing he wanted to do, was take that to the Big Bud and do a series of back crosses and then try to isolate the skunkiness or the Afghanness out of the Big Bud.
I mean, people just don't know these days, like, what that was. Because, like, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but, like, is there anything on the market these days that yields like Salmon Creek Big Bud or Matanuska Mist did?
It was all bred out, man. All the yield was bred out.
Yield is half of what it was 15 years ago, 18 years ago.
There's some stackers out there, like, people are still rocking Blue Dream rocks,
Dream's in there, yeah.
But no, I've never seen anything grow like the Salmon Creek.
Nothing, dude. Right. The yield was so
intense, and that's what I'm saying. And
what's pretty close, actually, which I like, is XJ13.
Oh yeah,
XJ13's in that
XJ
space.
Stacks.
That was a Jack cross, right? Jack Herrera cross. Yeah.
It does some of the same aromas, and it has that really beastly yield.
But it's got more of that Jack pine-y,
not the same
sort of vibe.
So everything I've planted with either that Salmon Creek cross all the way to the Grinch I have, which is the only S1 of that plant that I made, and then before Chris disappeared, he realized that that's pretty close, but that one had CBD in it, right? So it grows long and has that skunky aroma, but it's weird. So I would call it more like, it smells like more herbally or whatnot. But that everything I've crossed with that yields decent, but then you try to get people smoking, they're like, oh, I'm smoking this gelato or this tangy, and you're just like, Okay, cool.
Give it another 10 years, yeah.
And you're just like, but it gets you so lit, and they're like, oh, whatever, I'm not, it's like, oh, it doesn't have that sweet terp I'm looking for, and you're just like,
Well, yeah, and that's what I feel like all these exotics have gone away from being exotic to being the most commonplace.
Less exotic.
It's less exotic because it's everywhere. That's
Yeah.
like what is ubiquitous now is what people, 5 years ago, were chasing because nobody had it.
yeah.
And it's funny how the circles come back around, like trends of clothing or cars or anything. It's like every 30, 35 years, people start to remember, oh shit.
The bell bottoms are coming back again. I see ladies with legging yoga pants on that like are tight here, and all of a sudden they're just like full on bell bottoms. You're just like, great.
Yeah, it's like yoga pants meets 1970s.
Right.
It's awesome.
Meets disco era. It's pretty cool.
I would say that was the uniform of summer arts this year.
Yeah,
The flared bottom pants.
bottoms?
Oh, for sure.
dang,
It was
dude,
cool.
Soul Train back, dude, back and stepping, dude. That's awesome,
Right?
man.
That reggae soul train.
Yeah, good job with the preservation work and the skunk.
Thank you.
Like, it can't do this without like people like you doing this crazy shit. You really have to be going against the grain.
Yeah, and that's I don't, for me being a nutrient company, like that, making my own blends and stuff like that, I didn't take that step into the recreational market, so I don't have a lot that is riding on my shoulders. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's more about utilizing my R&D of the nutrients to fulfill my passion in medication. You know what I mean? So I get to take all these plants from seed, and you look at all the different phenos that I get, all the way from haze, all the way to the skunk, all the way whatever I'm working on that's from old school, and you're just like, oh wow, this one is similar to like.
Because you're not beholden to the commercial trend.
Right, so I don't have much going I don't have to.
There's nothing riding on it.
Yeah.
Other than your own satisfaction and, reaching that pinnacle that you're searching for.
And if my friends like it, then I keep it. If not, then, whatever. If I find a special cannabinoid like the THCVA and, some of my
Yes.
things, then I'm gonna keep it and work with it and still, ride my own grain. If people don't like the way my weed looks or smell, then you do you. I'm not trying to compete with you.
Go grab
like
some
that.
exotics, bro. We'll smoke this over here.
Yeah, I'm not you, you're not me, so you do your thing, like that. I was like, but I am here if you do want to acquire those kind of things, because you realize that that's the next thing. And wow,
Yeah.
this dude was crazy enough to like not want to worry about making money off of the strains. He was more worried about like.
People always
doing
want to
things.
ask questions about breeding, and like there's like some secret formula that you're going to tell them, and it's like the most common thing I think about breeders is they're just fucking stubborn as fuck.
Well, and they're used to their environment, and they're not used to like seeing how things, so they're used to what
Breeders
they're doing.
gonna do it their way, dude, and they're
Yeah.
not gonna listen. Like every prolific breeder I know is so stubborn in the sense that they're just like, don't try to tell me what to do.
I have a goal here.
It's just you wouldn't understand, and if you do, like honestly, even with you, Marty will be explaining to me stuff, and it takes me a year and a half until I'm like, now I know what he was talking about that day.
Yeah.
So I thought he
Like-
was just fucking crazy. Dude.
It does, because you have to know. You're like, oh, this whole skunk project has been so fun because we just DNA keeps revealing more, and just like the origin story becomes more and more solidified, and so it's like the whole thing when we started this skunk project years ago, it really was just Marty's reputation. I was just like, I know Marty, and if Marty's like, knows these skunk seeds to like have a valuable like history and like an authentic story, then like put 1,000,000% confidence in that. And then what later? Alleles and
Right.
cannabinoids and everything.
But it all started out with this group right here, this Humboldt
Humboldt Legacy
group.
Project,
So
yeah.
what we were doing was like we got approached by Medicinal Genomics, and they did their spiel in front of our whole little panel of people. Kevin Jodry was on there, Sean Stam, all these different people were on there. Daniel was on. We were all on there listening to this guy, and we were hammering them about like, oh, the whole phylos thing, this and that, right?
Yeah.
But me, deep down, I was like, well, I'm nothing to invest in this, and this is some old school genetics. I'm curious on how close this is to their own samples, regardless.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Regardless of reputation or whatnot.
How far are we away?
But that helped because I was so confident in my reputation of work, my sourcing.
Yeah.
That helped solidify what I was saying. Because people will come up with some crazy
chitter chat.
wizardry
Oh my God,
stories.
everybody's got their own opposition story, yeah.
So I got these seeds from a lady who was reverse stirring her water, and then she hung the seeds next to sage and some, whatever. You could some create if they
She
want.
had that witchcraft going.
If they want to create that story, that's great. But does that help with like matching with a real like this kind of story? This is a legacy story of classic community and classic genetics that we had, and it shows that look, if you had something that you thought was this strain, you can match it. If it's on there, you can match it. And so when that happened, it just bloomed. Everyone had ideas, and then now we're sitting here and letting everyone have their crack at the 2 samples that we submitted, knowing that we're just trying to see how they match up to what was on the Canopyright,
right?
In the genetic library from not just Phylos, but every single genomics
Not
company.
just that, they lined it up with
Weeblen.
this Weeblen paper that was published in 2015, and they bought seeds from David Watson and Hortifarm BV, so it's public peer-reviewed journalism that was like, this is where we got our skunk, and it leads all the way back. So they have a validated skunk that they researched and did DNA sequencing with there. And so we were lucky enough to have Kevin McKernan, Medicinal Genomics,
donate a couple tests
to do the genomic work, a whole genome sequence, and then correlate it back to this other published data that was, a decade, old now at this point. So.
Yeah, I mean, and it showed a lot of relationship on the tree to a lot of the class, like I was talking about, a lot of the classic genetics that were bred with that skunk, that lineage, because it's maybe not be the same clone, but they carry that same DNA.
Yeah, and it may not be a complete match, but it's a partial match.
Exactly, and so by seeing that, I was like already stoked, and then seeing that, I don't know if you discussed it, but that heterozygous,
the homozygous allele versus the heterozygous allele, yeah.
That's what triggered a lot of what do we do with these? Because wow, there's more work that needs to be done with this one, and this one, is more common and closer related to, and I didn't even know that information until recently about them matching that.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible, where it's like 6 alleles that were present in Marty's lineage. It's the only sample that they have in their entire database that the same 6 alleles were present in Marty's lineage that were present in this original skunk that was on record.
Lineage.
And it's heterozygous, meaning that it carries the THCA synthase carries.
Okay.
Well, they normally carry 2 pairs, but they're homozygous, so they're the same. But this one carries another
alternate.
one carries 2.
Wow.
So with more breeding work, there's just like, you can take that in any different direction.
Yeah, and so then I was like, oh wow, okay, so now this makes it cool, like skunk projects. I can take this skunk that I was using for breeding, and we can go this way, and then we can see what other kind of markers are popping out of other outcrossing.
And what they mean even, because that's like the greatest thing, is like they don't even know, they see these variations, and specifically the alleles that we're talking about are all in the THCA synthase gene. So it's like they were studying, how THCA synthase, all these different variants of the synthase gene affect potency and affect cannabinoid inheritance. And so this unique combination that Marty's has got all these different variations. And if you ask the top scientists, like, what exactly they do, they're like, well.
Yeah, and so part of what
it's still very mysterious.
Yeah, and once I learned that, I was like, they were like, no one knows that function, or maybe it's some kind of timing when something's introduced that it starts to like trigger that one. And I was like, so because I own that light lab, it has THCVA, so I was curious because it's not, whatnot.
Well, THCVA is mostly descendant out of the African genetics, right?
Yeah, and that's what I actually have. I actually have a from Africa male that's 1.5 times more THCVA than THCA.
Well, is that a Malawi genetic? Or?
No, it's from Zanzibar, Zambia, from bushweed my buddy collected from back in the day. So I'm trying to, so I can track that. So what I was doing with the skunk, that one that was heterozygous, was I was intentionally trying to pump it with one part of my nutrient blend, because that's what I can do with it, is I can water it in at any given time, trying to trigger all these things. And it's interesting that I saw CBG coming out of it with some that were given a certain dose combination.
Blend. Yeah.
Versus one, the CBG was gone in that same clone, and another one because I was allowing the THC to mature more, faster, and they're pulling them all different times. And this is that heterozygous one. So then I was like, okay, well, let me try this one. And I was trying to see if I can trigger that. That's what the beautiful part about having the analytical equipment is, you can try to trigger a plant to do something.
Is it timing of when you harvest it?
Well, it's just like, it's just like hemp, you know, and that's why I bought that, is because, like, dude, you could be like caught with your pants down in a hemp garden because with cannabinoids, because you got that little window.
Yeah, before it goes hot.
So our weather right now is a good example, right? We haven't had that much sunshine, right? So things aren't breaking down in the soil. So when you are flowering and you want this going on, because you're not watering as much, so a lot of the nitrogen's not being flushed out.
It's not cycling
And
through
not
the
cycling.
ammonium cycle as fast.
So it starts to be broke down at the wrong time, and then hemp now can either become not hemp and just biomass because it's growing, or it was too hot and it's flushing out all the nitrogen, and you're giving all this phosphorus, and you're increasing the THC value at that point.
And you're pushing towards more traditional cannabis genetic.
Right, and so having a light lab, I'm able to watch these things and see all those, how you can really control the crop.
Man, it's so fascinating to me, and we could go down this rabbit hole for weeks. And so all you folks at home, you should tap in, get in on the Humboldt Legacy Project, and start kind of exploring these concepts with these folks. And if you've got the deep, rootsy genetics and trackable stories, get involved with the Humboldt Legacy Project, bring it to the table. This is an opportunity to help protect those original genetics, but also to allow access to them so we don't lose them.
Yeah, preservation.
It's
It's like
so
it takes a
important.
village, yeah, for sure.
So I'm gonna say we should wrap this up, because otherwise we're just gonna go down the rabbit hole.
Oh, we
I'm gonna
got,
need
yeah,
to
I
crack
think
a
we need to
beer.
go smoke some herbs.
You know, friends together, we'll just do this for hours.
I think it's time to smoke
off.
some herb, you know? I think
So-
we got too stoned before this.
We're gonna go listen to some Seed 707 band, get some more people to come back, talk genetics, talk cannabis. Thanks for joining us on Royal Grown Radio. Marty Yip, Daniel Hendrix.
Thanks for having us.
We'll
Thank
see
you.
y'all again soon.
Peace.